This redneck dude is somehow able to pull off one of the biggest money heists in American history, and he becomes rich as hell. Now, the guy's name is David, and he works at Loomis Fargo as a vault supervisor, handling massive amounts of money all day. But despite that, he doesn't get paid very much. But that's about to change because one day, David meets this woman at work. Her name's Kelly. David thinks Kelly is fine, and they hit it off and start flirting, and soon enough, they start smashing. At some point during this period, David hears about an armored truck robbery that happened a few months before, several states away. A Loomis Fargo employee had robbed Loomis for millions of dollars, and at this point in the story, that robber hadn't been caught yet. I actually talked about that heist in a different video I did. Anyway, David and Kelly hear about this heist, and they're like, well, that guy took millions of dollars and didn't get caught. Maybe we could also rob Loomis Fargo and take millions of dollars and not get caught. What could possibly go wrong? Now Kelly, she knows just the guy who could help them pull off this heist. Her friend back from high school who's a bit shady, this guy Chambers. So the three of them put their heads together and start planning this big Loomis Fargo heist. There are other people on the sidelines involved in this heist too. But for now, let's just focus on these three main characters. A few months go by and they've got it all meticulously planned out. Then the big night finally rolls around. It's time to pull off the heist. David's actually working that evening, and when his shift ends, he leaves with the other employees. But he doesn't actually leave. Instead, he circles back and sneaks back into the building. Then he goes straight to the vault and starts taking money out, loading it into a Loomis van. Over an hour and a half later, he's done, having loaded about $17 million in cash into that van. Now, David knows there are security cameras all around this building. So before he leaves, he goes back to the manager's office and steals 2 surveillance tapes that would have footage of him on them. Next, he drives the Loomis van full of 2,700 lumps of cash to a parking lot in another part of town, where Chambers and Kelly are waiting in a different van. Then they transfer the money to the new van, a rental, but here's the thing about this rental van. It's a little small. So they end up leaving $3.3 million behind in the Loomis van because it all won't fit in the rental. Oh, but that's not the only thing they leave in that Loomis van, because David forgets those 2 surveillance videos he'd taken from the manager's office. From there, they all go their separate ways. Kelly ultimately goes back home, Chambers goes to his home, and David hops on a flight to head over to Cancun, Mexico, so he can lay low for a while. But unfortunately for him, when traveling internationally, you're limited to how much money you can bring, so poor David is only allowed to bring $50,000 with him. Meanwhile, David's wife, because yes, he's married and didn't tell his wife about any of this, reports him missing. Once police find the Loomis van with the leftover $3.3 million in cash in it, they also find the security tapes he accidentally left behind. So now they have their first suspect, David. And since this is such a huge heist, the FBI is now involved, but even they have no clue where David is. His face is broadcast all over as the FBI tries to find him, and while David's in Mexico trying to lay low, Chambers, not so much. Chambers and his wife take all this new money he just got, and they start spending it. In less than a month, they move out of their trailer home and into a 7,000 square foot gated community mansion, which they paid for in cash. They also buy TVs, a diamond ring, a Rolex, new cars. Chambers' wife even gets a nose job and a brand new set of implants. At one point, she even goes into a bank with $200,000 in a briefcase and asks the bank teller, hey, what's the most I can deposit without you guys having to report me to the feds? And then she says, don't worry, it's not drug money. So yeah, not surprising that people start noticing this behavior and pretty quickly report Chambers and his wife to the FBI. Meanwhile, Kelly is a bit more conservative with her spending. She buys herself a minivan, buys her kids a bunch of toys, nothing too big. But once the FBI learns rumors that she had previously been smashing with David, suddenly she becomes a suspect. So, the FBI decides the best way to bring these guys down is to wiretap Chambers' phone calls because of the 3 of them, he's obviously the loose cannon. During all this, David's still chilling in Mexico and keeping a low profile, but he realizes the $50,000 he brought with him isn't going to last too long. So he ends up calling Chambers and is like, hey, can you send me some of my share of the money so that I don't run out? Chambers says, sure, buddy, but instead of sending money, he decides to hire a hitman and sends him to Mexico to kill David. That way, Chambers can keep David's share of the money, and if David's dead, he can't snitch on them. At this point, you might be thinking, how the hell did David get himself into this mess? How did an otherwise nice guy with a clean record suddenly decide to steal millions from his employer? What makes someone snap like that? Well, think about it this way. He goes to work every day at Loomis and oversees the vault, which means he loads millions of dollars in and out. He's surrounded by money, but in his personal life, he can barely pay his bills, working sometimes 70 or 80 hours a week for $8.15 an hour. Imagine that, staring at stacks and stacks of cash all day while you're struggling to get by. After years in this situation, he started to resent his life and his marriage, until he started working with Kelly and started crushing on her. Kelly, who'd pushed him to do the heist, made him think it'd impress her. So basically, he did all this because he was broke and trying to impress a girl, and because of that, now there's a hitman after him. Luckily for David, when Chambers calls the hitman and tells him where to find him, the FBI's listening in because they'd tapped his phone. Now they know where to find David, so the feds go straight to Mexico, catch David, and boom, they arrest him. Here's his mugshot. The next day, they go and arrest Chambers. Here's his mugshot. Then they arrest Chambers' wife. Here's her mugshot. And of course, they arrest Kelly. Here's her mugshot. In total, about 20 people were arrested in connection with this heist. David gets sentenced to a little over 7 years in prison. Chambers gets 7 years. Chambers' wife gets 7 years. And Kelly gets 6 years. They all have to pay back the money they stole, but allegedly, to this day, $2 million of that heist money is still missing. They never found it, so I guess it's still out there.